pieces of that. So labor market information, barriers, opportunities, ideation, and innovation are going to be the key talking points that I have today. So where are we right now? And I apologize, I was trying to get as current as I can with the data. Usually the Department of Workforce Development for the state of Wisconsin has updates by this time of the month. They released the state's unemployment number, which is 2.8%, and that is equivalent to 86,200 people currently in the state of Wisconsin receiving unemployment benefits. Here in Dane County, I have the November reporting. In November, it was at 1.4%, which is equal to 4,666 people in all of Dane County. And I stress that because if you think about the communities like Stoughton and Sun Prairie and Middleton, in addition to Madison, there's just not a lot of people currently receiving unemployment benefits. So that's where we are. What does that look like as far as our population and changes in the workforce? One of the reasons for the shortage, if you notice the red and blue lines, that is the people that are currently aging out of the workforce. Baby boomers would be one term that is frequently used for that population. I'm a proud member, and I hope to be joining those ranks at some point in the future, but not anytime soon. But if you look at the blue and the black lines, the light blue, I should say, and the black lines, that is the people that are entering the workforce. So the problem that we have is that we don't have enough replacements for those that are exiting the workforce. If you look at the numbers of unemployed, the predominant numbers are those ages 25 to 34 and 35 to 44. That's the most significant piece. I think that if you look at that middle block, those are people that are taking part in the Great Resignation. Those folks are the ones that are looking for, I guess, better value, better engagement opportunities, and feeling that they're more part of the workforce that they're in. Unemployment by age, again, in Dane County, it pretty much mirrors what you saw for the region, and that was the region that I showed previously. So again, in Dane County, it doesn't look all that much different. Unemployment by gender, one of the things that we've discovered throughout the pandemic is that unfortunately females were impacted significantly more than males, largely for the reasons of caring for children due to issues caused by the pandemic. So Wisconsin's showing higher job growth as well, higher than the national average. So as we look at that, that's part of the problem. I apologize, I got ahead of my slides. So also there's a percentage of the underrepresented populations that's disproportionately affected. If you look at the African-American population and then the Latino populations, there's significant numbers there that are currently experiencing unemployment at a higher rate. And then again, to my earlier comment, Wisconsin's showing a higher job growth than the national average. And we also have a higher labor participation rate than the national average. We're at 66.4%, which is 4.9% higher than the national. So that's a little bit of the data behind it. So what can companies do to focus their recruitment efforts to fill the open positions that they have and overcome worker shortages? Because you don't want to just hear me talk about the problems, but where can we also find solutions? If you're not already tapping into it, the solutions that I think are the low-hanging fruit for business partners in this community are the Job Center Wisconsin partners, of which I am one. But the Job Center Wisconsin partners are job service, and you can use job service to post positions on the Job Center Wisconsin website. You can also work with them to connect on upcoming job fairs. They're doing a lot with the virtual platforms right now. One of the really nice advantages of the virtual platform is that you can literally multitask at your desk and participate in the job fair. So you can literally see when someone comes into your booth. The software program is called Premier Virtual. It's one of the best ones I've ever seen. So you can also initiate a chat. For example, if I'm an employer with a booth at the job fair and Paula comes into my booth, I can initiate a chat in real time for her to respond to on her computer. And if she should leave my booth and go to other booths, like let's say she goes and visits Colin, I can actually follow her with my chat. So when she frees up after her conversation with Colin, she can have that conversation with me. The other thing that I really like about the virtual platform is that you can identify who came to your booth and their email addresses, so you can have follow-up conversations and engage them. The one thing that I've noticed in job fairs, whether they're virtual or in person, is people tend to be a little shy and they don't necessarily initiate the conversation. When I work an in-person job fair, I've got a nasty habit of grabbing people and introducing them to employer partners that are there. And just starting the conversation, I literally would say, Paula here, I'd like you to meet, and introduce her to the employer. And again, start that conversation off. So there's some familiarity and some comfort level with that. So the virtuals, they don't draw a ton of folks, but right now, even the in-person stuff isn't drawing a ton of folks. We were partners on one that we did over at the Madison Marriott West back in the fall. And that drew, I think it was somewhere south of 200 people. And we had 71 employer partners, and they were delighted with the fact that we had 200 people. And it's a different world today, right? I hear from major employer partners of very large organizations that if they get one good candidate lead at a job fair, they're happy. Because if they can convert that into a hire, that's one less person that they have to worry about. It's just a really tough environment. The other thing about Job Center of Wisconsin is it allows you to conduct passive resume searches. And I don't think enough business partners take advantage of that feature. The team with Job Service really does a nice job of coaching you through it if you're not familiar with the product and how to use it. That said, there is a calendar of events for the year that Job Service has put out. So all of the engagements that they have planned for 2022 are publicly available. And you can go on the JCW website to find out about those. One last comment about the Job Center of Wisconsin website. We did an in-person job fair last year, and I had a business partner say, well, how come you didn't tell us about that? Well, if you're not on my distribution list or on the Job Center of Wisconsin website radar, I don't know how to get in touch with you. And by registering with Job Center of Wisconsin, having a profile, you automatically get notified of opportunities and events that come up through the Job Center of Wisconsin. Other partners are the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, the WorkSmart Network, Forward Service Corporation, the Office of Veterans Employment Services. All of these partners oversee training and education programs, can help you with participant referrals, and provide supportive services to increase the chance of participant success. The board oversees the grant for the WorkSmart Network grant funding. Those are people that are adult and dislocated workers. Last year was bananas as far as the number of workers that were dislocated as a result of a layoff through no fault of their own. And the WorkSmart program serves as an intermediary to help them identify either training opportunities so they can upskill and find economically stable supporting jobs for their families. Also, they can identify other employers in our network that they can refer candidates to help them become reemployed. So this is a quick look at the Job Center of Wisconsin website. Like I talked about, you can post your job opportunities, you can search for resumes, and then right here is that calendar of events for upcoming job fair opportunities. So a buddy of mine works in manufacturing, and he's one of the senior leaders at his facility. We'll call him Bob. And Bob and I were talking one day, and he was like everyone else I talked to, he was saying that we've got a real problem with identifying talent for our workforce. And I said, well, have you worked with the Job Center of Wisconsin partners? He said, like who? And I said, Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, for example. Does your HR team reach out to them? And he said, well, they wouldn't be a really good fit here. Those participants, they couldn't handle the work. And I said, you realize that disabilities can be seen or unseen. And through my partnership with my good friend Chantel Kilmer, who is the business services contact at DVR, she's given me quite an education. And when we had that initial conversation about seen and unseen, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I had a college roommate with dyslexia. That would be a disability, right? So they range throughout the spectrum. But DVR is a really great resource to help turn you on to opportunities to partner with them and their participants. And one of the things that Job Center of Wisconsin partners really like is to know, would you be open to a referral, right? So if a business partner is working with one of the Job Center of Wisconsin partners, can staff make direct referrals, or how do you want that to look? Do you want them to apply online? And everybody's got a different answer, right? I just met with a business partner last week, said, have them apply online, but then if your staff could give us a heads up, that'd be great. So again, it's a resource that in this day and age that you should be looking into if you're not. Another thing to consider is the apprenticeship model for expanding your talent pipeline. And there's several different apprenticeship formats. One is youth apprenticeship, which I'll talk about in a second. Another is registered apprenticeship. And then the third, which is a little less known, is certified pre-apprenticeship. So youth apprenticeship, the board actually is the grant administrator for the youth apprenticeship program in the South Central Consortium. We oversee the work of the Dane County School Consortium, the Madison Metropolitan School District, and the Jefferson County School Consortium. And they partner together to form one singular group called the South Central Wisconsin Consortium. Youth apprenticeship is a work and learn strategy to expand your talent pipeline. And I'll talk about the employer responsibilities. So a lot of people think that it is not a good fit for them, but I think that you're selling yourself short if you don't have the conversation. Key responsibilities are to participate in mentor training. So a youth apprentice can never be just cut loose to work by themselves. They need to have a mentor the entire time that they're on the facility floor or in the workplace. You interview and hire youth apprenticeship students just like anyone else in your workforce. Provide job training to youth apprenticeship students, pay youth apprenticeship students. They have to make at least minimum wage. And I would offer, if you're only offering minimum wage right now, you're probably not going to attract many candidates there, just like you wouldn't in your regular workforce outreach. You participate in regular progress reviews with the youth apprentice at least 3 times a year. Those progress reviews are also done with the youth apprenticeship coordinator for that school district. And then they have to work 450 hours a year. So it comes to be about 10 hours a week is the minimum standard. And then comply with employment for minors, AKA child labor laws. But one thing I'll share with you is that I've got one business partner who has 7 youth apprentices welding. There was an article in yesterday's State Journal about Stoughton Trailers and some youth apprentices that they have over there welding, right? So they can do a lot of different things. But I know enough to be dangerous, and I won't go any further with what they can and cannot do. So then youth apprenticeship can also be a pathway to bridge into registered apprenticeship. In youth apprenticeship, there's 11 different career paths. You can see on the screen the career paths for registered apprenticeship opportunities. So there are multiple ways to increase talent pipeline through apprenticeship. And then pre-apprenticeship is predominantly utilized through programs that are on the eligible training provider list for careers in the trades. That seems to be the sweet spot for those at this moment. Hopefully we can get more training providers to do work in other areas such as IT or CDL program for truck driving. So what are the most common barriers and challenges for job seekers right now, right? We've got a very tight labor force. A lot of people right now struggle with issues with transportation, issues with affordable housing, childcare, and then lastly, it's the pandemic fear and hesitancy to rejoin the workforce. So we know that in Dane County, we have a 1.4% unemployment rate, right? But I think the pandemic also accelerated some other issues with people that just dropped out of the workforce, in part due to layoffs and the small recession that we had at the start of the pandemic. And I think there's some opportunities to reconnect and overcome some of those barriers. I don't have the answers as to how that happens, but I know that, for example, in Dane County and Sauk County and Dodge County, which are all in my region, that affordable housing is a huge issue. Access to childcare is a big issue, right? Someone can get a job offer to start next Monday, but they're not able to line up childcare that quickly, if at all. And then in working with my good friend and colleague at Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, we've discovered that if you've got 2 children in the state of Wisconsin under the age of 5, your child care cost on average is $22,222. So once we found out that little nugget of information, I did a little math. So at $15 an hour, after taxes and after childcare costs, a person making $15 an hour gets to take home all of $71 a week. So my question to any parent of a child under the age of 5 is, would you give your child to a stranger to care for if all you're going to get out of it at the end of the day is $71 a week? And oh, by the way, we haven't talked about putting gas in your car payments, and insurance, right? So that is one of the key areas that I think there are potential solutions for to bring people back into the workforce. So again, more from my chat with my friend Bob. We were talking one day, and he said that their policy was basically if the temp workers that they had on staff couldn't keep up. And by the way, to frame this up, this was about 6 months ago we had this conversation. But if they, the employee couldn't keep up, then they were going to go find somebody else. And I don't know who else is out there right now, right? So I think that employers need to change their thinking on how can they work with the talent that they have. I had another conversation with one of our regional partners who is economic development director of a county in my region. And she said that her son was a manager at a place where a new hire on his very first day came in 2 hours late, right? And so what would you do with that new hire? And I think in the old days, most employers would have said, show them the door first thing, right? That's just not going to fly here. But he took a different tact and he said, so what's going on? We want you to work here, but you've got to show me a little bit more than this. He said, my alarm clock didn't work. And he said, I'm so sorry. And so at the end of the young man's shift, the manager let him work that day. And at the end of his shift, he said, here, and he bought him a brand new alarm clock. And the happy ending of the story is it never happened again. And that young man is now a successful part of their workforce. Also talked to one of our career planners with the WorkSmart program over in Dodge and Jefferson area. And they had a young lady who had just completed the welding program at Marine Park Technical and had been offered a job close to home, didn't pay a world of fire, but she really wanted to work in welding. She really wanted to be close at home. So she accepted the offer and they said, okay, can you start next Monday at 6 a.m.? And she said, I can't. She said, I can come in at 6:30, but I can't start at 6. I've got a little girl, she's 3, and I can't get her to childcare until 6:30. They put the offer back and said, I'm sorry, that's just not going to work for us, right? So again, in a day and age of talent being so hard to attain, what can business partners do to be more flexible and make allowances to utilize the talent that's available? Compare and contrast with that, I've got a business partner in Sauk who also has welders, and they were having some issues with turnover. And so he started doing exit interviews to find out. And he said, I understand that you're leaving. I'm not trying to talk you out of it, just wondering why. And they said, the schedule isn't working for us. I've got kids that I've got to do this, and I've got this going on. And so he made an executive decision and said, tell you what, from now on, we open at 5 for production. And we also close at 5 for production. You name your hours that you're going to come in every day and work. So it can be 9 to 5, It can be 8 to 4, but it's going to be consistently that every day. So basically work when you can. And he said ownership of the company wasn't real happy with him that day. But flash forward to today, their productivity has skyrocketed. Their employee turnover has diminished. Their employee satisfaction is skyrocketing. So again, by being flexible and thinking outside the box, I really think that, if businesses can rethink the way that they've operated in the past and redirect and retain the talent that's available to them now, they can have a brighter future. So, can you find positions for people that aren't necessarily a good fit in the role that they're in, and you are struggling to find reasons on how to keep them on? Can you redirect them to the positions that they might be able to excel in and be happier in? Can you partner amongst each other to redirect candidates that aren't a good fit for you, but perhaps are a good fit for someone else in your network? And then can you look into seasonal workers and how, one model that I saw was a company that uses summer help, but they don't have jobs the rest of the year, but they redirect them to other partners in their community that could certainly use them the rest of the year, with the caveat that you're going to give them back to me come summer, right? And that agreement is working. And I think there's a large amount of trust that has to happen there. And both companies have to own that and live their commitments to one another. But I think it can be something that works. Can those who need additional training and development be redirected to WorkSmart or other Job Center Wisconsin partners for resource and remediation? So if you get a candidate that you like, but they're just not a proper fit, because they're missing some piece of training or some part of the package that perhaps WorkSmart could help with, can you redirect them over to them for assistance in training and education? So what other possible talent sources out there that you could tap into? What do we know from our lessons of the pandemic about who left the workforce? Well, one of the things that we also learned is that a lot of people retired early, right? We looked at the third quarter of 2020 and 3.2 million more retired nationally than had the previous year. And I would offer that that's a trend that's continued, right? And then the other thing that we know is that of those that retired early, pandemic times, most would want to re-engage at some level on a part-time basis for the social aspect, not necessarily for the money, but for the social part. But again, because of the pandemic hesitancy, that's not occurring right now, and that's a part of our problem. The job fairs that we've done in person, what I've heard firsthand from participants overwhelmingly is, do you have any part-time jobs that employers are hiring for that you're aware of, right? And if I did know, I introduced them to those employer partners to say, this individual is looking for part-time work. I think you should have a conversation based on what you told me earlier. But I've talked to so many business partners in talking about their need for labor and talent and said, well, would you consider part-time? Well, no, that really wouldn't work for us. Well, why wouldn't it? Let's take away that, yes, this is what we've always done, and think about if you've got two people doing the work part-time, it helps. And I get that there's practical reasons why not, but you're also short. So can we look at reimagining roles to accommodate the early retirees? One thing that I've seen in several instances is mentorship, right? So you've got these young people coming in for youth apprenticeship, perhaps, or just coming in as high school graduates. Can you have that early retiree or two mentor those individuals to help them be more productive and teach them the tips and tricks of your industry? So, and then again, Manufacturing Alliance study of 200 plus people between the ages of 56 and 65 found that flexible hours keep people in the workforce longer. The same employer partner that I mentioned earlier with the work when you can hours, I toured their facility about a month and a half ago. And my tour guide said, and this is, we'll call him Bob. Bob's been with us for 30 years. Bob's 90. And Bob works when he can. And he comes in, and Bob was kicking butt in the production line. He's attaching pieces to this metal frame. And he's a highly productive member of their workforce, right? So here's someone that has a lot of institutional knowledge about the product line. He productive. He's not exactly sitting in a chair taking up space. So again, can we reimagine roles for early retirees? And then again, I get back to the childcare issue, right? So in the US, 1 in 5 working age adults said the reason they weren't working because COVID had disrupted their childcare arrangements. So, 1 in 5 people, if you could tap into that resource and find a way to bring them back. And again, we know that the costs are an issue. And I've talked at great length to a contact of mine with an agency called 4C. And she said, one of the bigger problems is not the capacity of childcare providers, but the wages paid by childcare providers. And they have struggles raising wages because there's other things that go into that. But if you're paying a daycare teacher $14 an hour and they can walk across the street to Quick Trip or name your institution of choice where they can make more money and get the hiring sign-on bonus and they're having the same problems as everybody else. And then as a parent of a child in one of those institutions, would you want your kid in a facility that's had 3 different teachers this semester, right? So again, those are some of the things that we're looking at as barriers to continued employment. Aaron's, I thought, was kind of an interesting take on things. They partnered with KinderCare to open a childcare facility on their premises. And so they found that as a way to overcome those issues. So as I mentioned earlier, the average cost for childcare for a family of 2 under the age of 5 is $22,222 a year. And there's my math that I did. So you can see that the difference, though, between $18 and $15 an hour is $161.57 a week that they would have for any other expenses, right? So at some point, I was talking to a colleague and they said, well, what's the threshold going to be when it actually makes enough sense pay-wise for people to come back to the workforce? And I said, I think that answer varies from person to person, but now you're talking $162 a week. Maybe for some, that's the tipping point, right? If they can add that to their family budget each week. So what are other potential opportunities? The justice-involved population coming out of corrections. We've seen that with training and opportunities, some of those individuals can be very highly productive members of workforce. And there's actually studies that show that it reduces recidivism and reentry into the population of those incarcerated. College students, reach out to your technical college. A good friend of mine who's retiring actually this week, Rochelle Wanner, is with Madison Area Technical College. And she is the one responsible for their program called Handshake. It's a software platform that employers can use and post on. Don't worry, you can also reach out to Trish Cardini. She'll still be there. She's a little younger than Rochelle and I, and so she won't be retiring anytime soon. But Madison Area Technical College, Moraine Park Technical College are both in our region. Community-based organizations such as churches, service clubs and organizations. I was just talking with a partner this morning, and I said, I think that we need to be thinking for recruitment, because even in the work of helping job seekers and finding participants, the partners are even struggling to find participants right now, right? So I said, we need to think about our ground game and go back to what we used to do years ago and do some guerrilla marketing in laundromats and churches and restaurants, any place that you can hang a flyer. Remember the old days when you'd hang the flyer with the little tab that people could rip off with your phone number? That's a thing again. So, if that's another way for business partners to reach out to people in the community that might be seeking jobs and opportunities, grocery store bulletin boards. So I hate to say it over and over again, but what time is it? It's time to get creative. We need to rethink about how we're spreading the message. So can you empower messengers? And so the first place I would look is within your own staff. Your staff can be some of the best messengers you have. And I think that you really need to be cognizant of what your staff is saying outside of your workplace to their friends and families, right? If they're out there screaming your praises and saying what a great place this is to work and why, that's got a lot of power. So one thing that I would offer is making sure that you're including staff as often as possible in decision making, especially when it affects their work, right? And solutions to problems that you're having. I just watched a webinar that was done showing why women in Wisconsin specifically were leaving the workforce at a much higher rate than on the national average. And one of the reasons is they didn't feel that they were being engaged in being part of the solution. They wanted to know what's my purpose here? And the purpose isn't to make the widget that is going to create profit for the company. It's what's their purpose at the workplace? How are they being a part of what your work is day to day? So what other messengers might you have that you could leverage? Well, any visitor that you have on your facility's campus, if you will, things like that. So another story that I like to tell is that I've been partnering with Centro Hispano and their Caminos Progreso program. And we took this group of students pictured here to one of our local employer partners. And they did it. And I was blown away. I mean, we had 6 ladies in the program. And we went in for the tour, and they had the CEO of the company. They had HR leadership. They had 4 staff to tell them all about career opportunities. And then if you notice the bags on the tables, they had swag bags for these people. And they, oh, by the way, they put on a dinner meal. It was just crazy how much they just really put on a nice spread and a nice presentation, right? And the presentation was really good too, but it was a charm offensive. And so I said to my partner that is with Centro, I said, even if no one takes a job there from that group, I guarantee they all went home and told their family members, they told their friends, what a great company Royal Printing is, right? Because they rolled out the red carpet. So what are people saying about your organization in the community? Create a buzz that has some meaning and gets you noticed. Innovate. We hear a lot about tuition reimbursement as a thing again, right? But has anybody looked at student debt forgiveness? Because not everybody's got tuition, right? A lot of your employees that you're looking at bringing on board might already have a degree. So some companies are giving a stipend for student debt forgiveness. Overcoming transportation barriers. I've got a partner in the Sauk area that if you give another employee a ride every day for a week, then they give a stipend for that, right? To offset your gas costs for picking that person up. And again, it helps people that don't have access to transportation, especially in the outer counties. It gives them a reason to stay engaged in your workplace. Again, we talked about it earlier, partner with other businesses, reverse referrals to the job center partners. Celebrate your culture publicly, right? Do company picnics. I mean, right now, obviously with Omicron, it's not doable, but when spring hits, do picnics and grill out with staff. Celebrate milestones like anniversaries or successes within the company, birthday celebrations. I went into a business the other day and they had a big digital sign up and it was listing all the people's birthdays and anniversaries. I just thought, what a cool culture to be a part of, right? I worked for a company, my very first job out of college, and the CEO of this very large restaurant group called me up and gave me a welcome aboard conversation. And then on my birthday, 6 months later, I got a birthday card from the same CEO. Can you imagine how cool that made me feel? It's like, yeah, he knows that I'm here. He respects me. So do the cool stuff, celebrate in your recruiting efforts and be different. And then reimagine your work. If your job descriptions are still calling for that 4-year baccalaureate degree that you really don't need, get rid of it. I talk to my manufacturing friends all the time. I say, if you're asking in your job requirements that they have experience in the industry, why? Because no one's, if I walk in the door with no industry experience at all, you're still going to hire me. You're going to train me anyhow. And if that's the case, then don't put it in there because you're screening people out, not screening people in. And the same thing with looking at your HRIS systems. If you're using the software for HR, look at what it's doing because it could be screening out really good candidates instead of finding ways to bring people in. Do you have an 18-year-old age requirement? If so, why? Youth apprenticeship, there is language in the contracts that allow youth to work on certain things that child labor laws won't, right? But again, you have to get in the fine print. I'm working with Frito-Lay right now to do a presentation at our upcoming TDCon about how they got through that process, right? And they have a legal team through PepsiCo, that trust me, I know that they went through that with a fine tooth comb to make sure that what they were doing was right. Registered apprenticeship. People think of apprenticeship as a greasy, dirty stuff that dad used to do and grandpa used to do. That's not the case anymore, right? So there's even a pathway for IT and logistics and transportation. So you really want to look at those opportunities if they are a good fit for your organization. And again, justice involved folks. Leverage the talent that you can access, part-time, flexible hours. Talked to my boss the other day. He had a conversation with a partner that went to 410s. And the bonus of doing that was that fifth day, if Johnny doesn't come in for his shift because he's got COVID, then we ask one of the other employees that has already got their 40 hours to come in for time and a half. It's a much easier conversation to have, right? There's a lot more interest in making money than there is just coming in one more day. And again, work when you can. Got a guy working at 90 years old in Sauk County. I couldn't believe it. And he loves it. Seasonal work arrangements, utilize retirees as mentors. How do staff know that they're valued? How much are you investing in retention compared to recruitment, right? I think the numbers should be equal personally. Is existing staff being compensated for the experience and equivalent to the talent your team is bringing in? You don't want to offend your current staff by raising rates and bringing in people at higher numbers than your existing staff are making. They want to feel valued too. Stay interviews, if you're not doing those already, they're a really cool concept. So stay interviews, a lot of companies are doing once a year. Why do you want to stay here? What keeps you engaged in our workforce? What do you like about our culture and our company? And then they're taking that data, compiling it and using it to make their culture better. And then leverage that in the way your recruiters are out there in their activities. Then there's a lot of value on being on the front lines and leading from the front. I did a tour of a company in Jefferson and it blew me away. Large company. And on the tour that we did through the manufacturing facility, my tour guide, who was a senior level manager, says, hey, Bill, how you doing today? Right. And we go to the next area. Hey, Sally, how are the kids? Right. Knew every single employee by name and they all knew him. Right. And they had a thing that I thought was really clever. So whenever there was someone that wasn't following the safety protocol, the manager that was touring me would literally, he said, we just hold up 4 fingers. And that means you're doing something that you shouldn't be. You need to reevaluate what's going on right here, right now. And they usually figure it out within seconds, right? That, oh yeah, I didn't have my safety glasses on, or. But again, it's leading from the front, being invested in your staff, having that culture that it's a collaborative, not a top-down decision-making process and just do what you're told kind of a thing. And create media-worthy events. Do things that get noticed in the press, right? So if you're doing a fundraiser for a school, or if you're doing some kind of a charity marathon, walkathon, readathon, whatever the case may be, let the press know. If it's a slow news day, they can pick it up and give your organization some exposure. Edutainment, if I could tap into a cheap and easy way to get games that would represent industries, how cool would that be to expose our youth, right? Because the young people right now, that's what they relate to. They want to play games and get connected to things in that way. I think one of the more clever strategies I've seen lately is those flyers that show up in my mailbox from local organizations and companies that are hiring. The sub shop sent me something the other day. Not that I'm looking to bail out on the workforce development board, but it's like, okay, here's an opportunity that came to my house. They obviously are looking for me. But I thought that that's just kind of clever. I also love the Kit Kat bench that I found in a graphic there, right? I thought, what a great way to promote your company if you're Kit Kat candy bars. So Nestle had their thinking caps on. Community events to promote the company. I like cookouts and bake sales and things like that. I talked to a business partner, and I think we'll get back to it at some point, but Madison was doing those wine walks for a while, which were really good ways for businesses to promote themselves and their opportunities. I've had companies that have suggested doing cookouts open to the public in their communities. more in the outer counties. I think in Madison proper, that might be a little more challenging. You could have more interest than you were ready for. But I just thought, what a great idea to get the community on your property and expose them to the opportunities of your companies. And then again, tie into the workforce system that's available to you, all of which I've listed there. So in conclusion, this isn't going away. More baby boomers are retiring than our replacements were made to replace us. And that's going to last for 7 years. We've known it's been coming for a long time. Unfortunately, the pandemic has exacerbated the problem and accelerated the problem. And again, as I said, a lot of people that retired early who normally would re-enter the workforce in some way, shape, or form just have no interest in doing so because of the pandemic. Might that change? Certainly it could, but that's not where we are right now. So to overcome the talent deficit, businesses need to adapt and change to succeed. You've got to be open to reimagining your processes and innovating new and creative solutions. Again, retention has got to be valued as much as recruitment. If you're not paying attention to your retention efforts, I look at it as doing sales, right? So companies, I used to work in education, and they were studies upon studies upon studies of how much does it cost to get a student in your building, and then how much are we spending to keep them there, right? And in education, freshman year is the most critical time to make sure that that student feels a part of the campus and the culture, right? Because that's when they tend to leave at the highest rate. And the main reason is they don't feel that they've got a network of friends and people that they are connected to that can help them. So we did a lot intentionally where I worked to make sure that we were doing intentional mixers, right? So engagements like picnics that students could meet students. Orientation day, we would do little engagements where I'm trying to think, icebreakers, right? So that they would have to talk to each other. And I remember one was so goofy, but it was using your knuckles for the different questions that we would ask. And one is, for the knuckles, it was also thumb buddy with your thumb. Who's thumb buddy that you respect, right? Where was your hometown? Did you play sports? And what the conversation was really around was trying to give them a way to connect with someone else. And the hometown question was, or where do you currently live, was to figure out if I need a ride, who can I tap into, right? So it might be that Colin and I both live in Wanakee. And so if my car breaks down, now I know I can call Colin for a ride to work. So things like that. And then leverage relationships with your workforce system partners. Again, tech colleges, WIOA, Apprenticeship, and the other JCW partners like DVR, Office of Veterans Employment Services, and Forward Service Corporation. So I don't have all the answers. I've got a lot of suggestions, a lot of wild and crazy ideas, a lot of thoughts. I like to tell some of my business partners that if you're open to it, I'll call you every time I have a harebrained idea about what might work. And some say yes. But with that said, I appreciate you listening to me. I know I tend to ramble sometimes, but I'm very passionate about this work. And if you've got any questions, I would entertain those.
Well, Jeff, I'll just mention that you gave a lot of great information. Thank you for that. And you did say you would make your slides available. So we'll have hopefully somebody from Dayton Buy Local just email a copy of your slide presentation out. One question, are you like, an employer can just kind of contact you directly to talk through ideas, or what's the process for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm actually one of the anchor partners for the local business services team. And so again, those partners that I mentioned, you can reach out to any one of us, but we have been meeting with, lately more Zoom, just because of the Omicron spike, but we have been meeting with business partners in the region and just talking through some of the stuff that I talked about today, but also how you can create partnerships and get those tethers to the talent of the participants in our programs. So yeah, you can certainly reach out to me and let me know, and I can arrange those. We recently were just involved in a lot of activity in the north, Sauk, Columbia, Marquette, We also have to be mindful of Dodge and Jefferson. Fortunately for you all, Dane seems to get a lot of attention just because it's the largest kid in the room, right? So, and to be fair, we all work here in Madison for the most part. So, but yeah, we'd be delighted to have those conversations, and reach out to me. Paula and Colin have my contact information, and you can certainly get connected.
So I've got a couple of questions. Early in the presentation, you mentioned about the virtual job fair. Is there a cost for an employer to participate in that? How does that work?
Colin, I'm so glad you asked that question. The cost is literally zero. And so through the Job Center of Wisconsin, the mindset is that, and again, I'm a partner, but we don't want to charge anything unless we have to. So for the virtual stuff, there is zero cost. For the in-person events, just to be crystal clear, the only time we ever charge is just offset the cost for venues and advertising and, right? So the Job Center Wisconsin partners do not want to be seen as trying to make money off of these events. We're not. We literally just try to cover costs because we're a nonprofit. Some of the partners are government agencies, so on and so forth, but the majority of us are nonprofits too, right? So it's a great question, but yeah, that's the other bonus to the virtual events. You can multitask, work on the Excel spreadsheet on your desktop, and somebody comes in your booth. Now you know, and you can engage, right? And if it's a slow day, it's a slow day. I mean, that again, it's a sign of the times. We did a job fair for manufacturing only last year. I had 17 participants. I had more companies represented than I had participants, right? It's just where we're at. And again, at 4,666 job seekers in Dane County, all of Dane County, that's tough sledding. So if you can get one, it's a win.
Yeah. And how do people sign up for that? How do they get in?
If you go to that Job Center of Wisconsin website that I had up earlier, that little calendar icon with workforce events, if you go onto there, you can click on the links inside. It'll direct you. If you have struggles with it, just let me know and I can connect you with Job Center staff, and they can walk you through it. There's three fabulous ladies that do all the work behind the scenes with that, and they're super helpful in coaching people through.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Make a suggestion or add it here.
Sure.
I was thinking about when you were saying that small business are these, you could have field days, or I think that's what Liz Henry said, but open it up to public. If you are thinking of doing that,
Unlimited, Shantae speaking.
if you were thinking of doing that, Dane by Local has, if you research our membership directory, we have food trucks, stuff like that, where you could work with a local business who is also, needing the money and needing the work. That would be a great resource just to latch on there. And the other thought I had was a compliment I had, I guess, was the idea about changing the expectations for young people and the education piece of things. There are, I think we all know that there's generationally, there's different attitudes. And it seems to me that this attitude, this group of people coming in, is different than the group just before it. And these are people that want to work and they want to learn and they have lots of energy and they want to be part of change. And so in bringing them in before they technically would have been ready before and teaching them seems like a really, really great idea. I love that.
Just made me think. I'm going to see if I can find it really quick and I'll share it. I tell you what, I'll share it with Colin and Paula later. There was an interesting piece in yesterday's Wisconsin State Journal about one of the consortium's youth apprentice students at Stoughton Trailers, and she is loving the welding career path. So to your point, changing attitudes and perceptions, and the article really was centered around non-traditional roles. So, again, be creative in how you're thinking about things. They're not necessarily the way they always had been, right? So the more you can get your head around innovation and ideation, I think the better off you'll be. And to Liz's point, Liz, I've taken your tour. It's a fabulous tour. I highly recommend it. So thank you for that.
Hey, I just wanted to give a couple of comments and some kudos to, you guys at Dane by Local, but also for having this, but also for Jeff. I know he was able to help us in DeForest. I can't even believe that was probably at the very beginning of the pandemic that we did a drive-through job fair, Heike and I did in our parking lot right out my window here. And that was a really, I guess those are kind of passe now, but we thought it was really successful. And so, you gave me a lot of ideas here today to do something, community wide. Maybe it's an event. I see, we have people from the school district on and Heike, and Liz Henry. Maybe it's something that we do, as a community here, do the kind of roll out the red carpet type of thing that we do for everybody, and maybe get a group together. I don't know, all these things I'm thinking, but anyway, would love people's thoughts, and Jeff is always good to kind of knock things around with. But so thank you for all you've done for us during this time.
Well, my pleasure. And to everyone, so poor Michelle and Heike, because it was after the Safer at Home and I hadn't talked to anybody and I don't know how long. I think I must have just went a mile a minute and talked their ear off for about 15 minutes when I stopped to see them. It was great. And you did a great job because you served in that drive-through. Didn't you serve around 100 people?
I think we did about that. Yeah, 100 people came through. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I like your idea about the community engagement, right? How can you roll out the red carpet for community members? Because again, you're creating messengers and hopefully getting them to think about your organization for work, right? So
yeah. And we've been thinking a lot about that. How do we get more community engagement around some of those issues you brought up at the beginning of your presentation, which are so true, like housing and transportation, all of those issues. So maybe getting coalitions of employers together to kind of do that and do like a big job fair. So just all these things running through my mind.
we're having similar thoughts. I guarantee you that. So again,
thanks.
Yeah, because again, I think that's part of it too, though. And I think organizations like yours with Dane by Local might be part of that solution, right? And I've got a partner in Sauk, and they were looking at housing, and they delved into it and said, that's just not going to work. But can we look at the childcare piece then? Because that's another way we can free up money for families and help re-engage that workforce, right? So, the transportation thing's real as well. I talked to one of our partners who's going to be working, well, who's not going to be, is working with the Afghan refugee resettlement program, right? And I said, we had that one business partner over in Sun Prairie that was extremely interested in working with those participants, right? Well, transportation is going to be the barrier there. I don't know what we can do about that. Well, let's think about what we can do about that, right?
Yeah.
And let's talk to that business partner to see if there's something they're willing to do about that. So to your point, Michelle, we've got to continue to look at those barriers and how can we free up additional workforce or get them back in the game, because there are some that are just not re-entering the workforce. I don't think the unemployment number is a complete reflection of the people that would work if they could find a path to do so.
Well, that's wonderful. Are there any other questions for Jeff? I don't see any or in the chat or hear anyone. Well, I just want to thank Jeff again for your time today. Obviously, you're doing a huge job for all the employers and workers in this area. We appreciate all that you do, and this presentation was great. Lots of great ideas and connections as well. So with that, if there aren't any other questions, I will wrap it up. Thanks for joining us today. Again, look for something from Dane by Local with some additional information. And don't forget to register for our next Lunch and Learn in February.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Paula.
Yep. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.